Very good morning, students. Today we will going to roll down our next chapter, size separation. Size separation basically it is a unit operation that involves the separation of mixture of various sizes of particles into two or more portions by means of screening surfaces. Size separation is also known as sieving, screening, sifting, and classifying. As far as size reduction of solid material is concerned, it's never been gives you the particles of same size, but it gives you the particles of varying sizes, that is distribution in different sizes. So once the size of material is reduced, it is subjected to size separation techniques in order to obtain the powder of desired particle size range. Hence, this unit operation cannot be isolated from size reduction as it forms an integral part of the latter one. Okay. Not to forget the definition of particle size distribution here. It is defined as the number of particles in each size range present in given powder of specified weight. As far as different types of methods of size separations are concerned, the particle size separation has been done with the different types of methods available. First one is sieve methods, second one is fluid separation method. As far as subtypes of the fluid separation methods are concerned, there is three distinct methods are available. One is sedimentation method, then second one is elutriation method, and third one is cyclone separator. But as far as subtypes of the sedimentation method is concerned, it is divided into the two parts, that is continuous settling chamber and another is multiple chamber centrifuge. Then second one is your elutriation method. It has fallen down into the two different category, that is liquid elutriators and airflow elutriators. The example of liquid elutriator is multi-stage elutriator, and airflow elutriator, the example is upward airflow elutriator and centrifugal airflow elutriator. The third one in fluid separation method is your cyclone separator. The example is cited here is reverse flow cyclone separator. As far as the different types of mechanism of sieving method as well as fluid separation method is concerned, when we talk on the very first method, that is sieving method, then that mechanical sieving method has performed its role better on the basis of different types of the method, that is agitation, brushing and centrifugation. In case of agitation, there are the different types of motion mechanism has been used. The first one is oscillatory motion, second one is vibrating motion, and third one is gyratory motion. So we're going to discuss this sieving method one by one. But before than that, we should know what actually the agitation is talk on the sieving method. So this mode of motion which involves the vigorous shaking of sieves in the different types of ways, that is oscillating, vibrating and gyratory. Oscillatory motion, in this type of motion the movement of sieves takes place with the help of rotating shaft. In this, the sieves placed on the frame are moved into and fro motion corresponding to the plane of sieve. So second one is vibrating motion. In this type of motion, the material is placed on the sieve, which is then subjected to high speed vibration by employing either an electrical or a mechanical device. And third one is, that is gyratory motion, there in agitation. In this type of motion, an eccentric flywheel is used for rotating the sieve, which is placed on the rubber mounting, and which is gonna fixed axis in a circular motion. So this type of rotary movements which provides the spinning motions to the particles, which results in the passage of particles through the sieve. So these movements can be either along the horizontal or vertical plane. Also, it may gyratory on one end of the screen and oscillatory at the other end. There are the different types of merits, and the demerits are more concerns with respect to this method. So as far as method is concerned, so this method is very simple, and it is not quite of expensive, so it is affordable, and also it is less time consuming one. But when we talk on the limitation part, then this method cannot be applied for a wide range of the particle size, as it is a conventional method, as we had seen as far as our presentation or lecture was concerned. Weight powders cannot be subjected to size separation by this mode, as the aperture may get clogged with the particles, and this may lead to improper sieving. And third limitations would be, as the particles are agitated vigorously, they may collide with one another, leading to attrition, which causes further size reduction, which is quite of undesirable to transform your excipients for the better designing of your dosage form. As far as brushing is concerned, in this method a brush is used for carrying the process of size separation. The brush, attached with the help of handle to the middle portion of the circular sieve, rotates along the surface of the circular sieves, and this method is suitable for greasy and sticky powder materials. Okay, you can cite here the example waxes and the soaps, etc. As far as centrifugation mechanism is concerned, so a vertical cylindrical sieve consists of a high speed rotor fixed at its center. As the rotor rotates at a very high speed, the particles present inside the vertical cylindrical sieves are thrown in a outward directions under the influence of centrifugal force, and air currents are generated inside the equipment, and due to these air currents the particles separated out. So this is all about the mechanism concerns with your sieving method. So we will going to talk one by one on different types of the methods, which is quite of very important as far as the aspect of size separation is concerned. So first of all, we're going to talk on the sieve shaker machine, or you can say the device. As far as the principle of the sieve shaker is concerned, the powder drug is separated according to the to its particle size using a set of sieves in a nest. So these are subjected to different types of agitation so that size separation is rapid. And as far as the construction and working is concerned, it is so simple to go through this method. But I have already told you that limitation concerns with this method. It is a conventional type of method, and that's why the accuracy would not going to be maintained while determination of the particle size. Standard sieves, as far as construction is concerned, the standard sieves of the different mesh numbers are available commercially as per the specifications of different types of official compendia. So these sieves are fixed in a mechanical shaker apparatus. If you could able to see there in the diagram at the right hand side of your slide, you could able to see the mounting of the sieves takes place. Then the different types of labeling conditions are there, which indicates the construction of these sieve shaker. At the bottom you could able to see there is a control panel or external control unit. You can say that that is indicator, bulb, timer, on, off. Then exactly above than that there is a receiving pan, then finest sieve, sieve set, coset, coset sieves, and the lead which will be fixed the position of your different types of the sieves together. As far as the working of this sieve shaker is concerned, so sieves are arranged in a nest with the coarsest at the top, and a powder sample around, you can take at least 50 gram of sample, which is going to placed on the coarsest sieve. The sieve set is fixed to the mechanical shaker apparatus and shaken for a certain period of time. So the time, it is totally depend upon what type of material you do have and what kind of the objective you have set it to start your operations in the lab level. And the powder retained on each sieves is weight. So whereas practical consideration is concerned, so you should have to take care of the order to get the reproducible results. The type of motion influences the sieving. Vibratory motion is most efficient, and followed by the side tap motion, bottom part motion, or you can say the rotary motion with the tap, and finally the rotary motions too. So these are the nothing but different types of way by which you can go through this process, and the type of motion and intensity of the shaker are fixed and standardized, and shaker are commercially available, I have already told you. And other factors are the weight of sample and duration of shaking. So sieves produced by the photo etching and electroforming techniques are used to get a better estimate of the size distribution analysis, with a lower limit of estimation of particle diameter around 50 micrometer. As far as the advantages of this sieve shaker is concerned, I have already told you that it is kind of inexpensive, so everyone can afford it, and it is as far as the execution is concerned, so it is very simple and rapid with the reproducible results. As far as the disadvantages, or the, you can say, the limitations are concerned with this sieve shaker method, the lower limit of the particle size is called of less one, that is 50 micrometer. If powder is not dry, apertures get clogged with the particles, which leading to the improper sieving. And the third limitations would be, you can say that during the shaking, the attrition, that is particles colliding with each others, which occurs and which cause the size reduction of the particles. So these lead to the error in the estimation. So as far as the variance is concerned with this sieve shaker, the electromagnetic sieve shaker is there, so it is useful for analyzing the powders under the controlled conditions. Sonic sifter is there, so this apparatus utilizes the sonic oscillation. A mechanical pulse action is used to reduce the blending and agglomeration in the sieves sizes. So sieves should be used and stored with the care, since a sieve is of little value if the meshes becomes damaged or distorted. With the exception of the use of sieves for granulation, materials should be never be forced through a sieve, and the particles, if small enough, will pass through a sieve easily if it is shaken, tapped or brushed. So that is nothing but the sort of limitations concerns with this. Then next one is your fluid separation, which works on the principle of sedimentation. So we know that we all of us know that even that Stokes equation, what is the significance of the Stokes equation. So the size separation utilizes the difference in settling velocities of particles which suspended in a fluid. So we're going to talk on the continuous settling chamber. So in that the dilute suspensions of particles we have to take in a fluid which enters from the top and affected by the different types of two forces. One is your horizontal force, which signify the fluid velocity, and second one is your vertical force, which is responsible for the setting velocity by gravity, which is totally depend upon the particle size. The coarset particles settling firstly near the inlet, and then the finest particles will sediment far from the inlet of fluid stream, and very fine ones remains in the suspension. Particles which is separated into the different hopper type, which can discharge from the point can be removed continuously. So this is all about the continuous chamber. As far as the disadvantages is concerned, so separate into the coarse and fine fractions only, not for the very fine particles. We had seen the construction. As far as the working mechanism is concerned here, if you could able to focused in the diagram, then diagram depicts you the informations which is quite of easier to get in. So if you could able to see the left side of this slide, then there is a suspension fluid inlet, there is inlet. So if you could able to distinguish the two parts at the bottom, which is indicated at first line and the second one. So if you could able to see the direction of the red arrow at the first half, you could able to see the particles which are separated, which is quite of bigger one as compared to the second chamber, where the particles are quite finer as compared to the first one. So it's only because of the density or the heavier particle, or you can say the particle size of quite more, which even belongs to the coarse or the moderately coarse powder or the category. So due to the high density, it readily going to fall down and goes into the first chamber, which is of your coarse chamber, you can say. And second one, which is quite of the particles quite of lesser in diameter, or due to the less density, the particles would be move forward, which will be going to be entrained into the fluid, and it would be the part of your second chamber, where the moderately coarse or fine particles, you can say, which will be collected. So you will get the two duct here, which is indicated at the bottom, that is means by particles outlet. So in the first outlet, you could able to distinguish and collect your coarse particle, and in second collector, you could able to collect your finer particles. So distinguishing features are really helpful to you people to classify your particle size very easily. And as far as steel, if your suspension, if it does contain the particles which is quite of lesser in size, so due to the less density, it will be remain entrained there in the fluid flow, and that's why due to the lighter weight, it would not going to be sediment at the bottom. So it is remain there in the fluid stream, and that's why the through the fluid outlet, your particles get separated out. So that is nothing but only your outlet, but your motto, if it is to separate out the coarse from the fine one, then if your or even if your what you can say, the sample, if it does have the particles in ranges, then you can go through the continuous settling chambers, where you could able to separate out your coarse and moderately coarse, even fine, and even very fine powders. So we'll see next is your multiple chamber centrifuge. Multiple chamber centrifuge, it is quite of it is not going to be very different as far as your previous centrifuges or chamber is concerned, that is continuous chamber. But as far as the principle is concerned, so fluid classification by centrifugation to increase the driving force, the particles are affected by the two forces, fluid velocity and centrifugal force, as we had already seen in the continuous chamber. Then coarset particles which will sediment in the first inner cylinder, and then finer particles which carried out to next cylinder, and the finest one remains in the fluid. If you could able to see there in the diagram, then with the vertical lines, you could able to see that there are the stationary baffles are there, which is not moving in, which is steady one. And if you could able to see the chambers, there is a spinning chamber is there, and at the right hand side, you could able to see the fluid outlet. There is a one rotation axis, that is a shaft, and there is a fluid inlet for the suspension. And also you could able to see the moving directions with the arrow as far as your fluid velocity is concerned. So multiple chamber centrifuge, which signify when you are supposed to pour the fluid suspension from inlet, then depending upon the density, depending upon the particle size, that particles which will going to be move forward depending upon whatever the velocity is gonna generated itself by the instrument, or it is deliberately created the fluid velocity. So depending upon the fluid velocity, the fluid will move forward. But as far as the heavier size, that is higher density and lower density size is concerned, then if the particles, if it does have the higher density, or it possesses the higher density, then that particles which will going to be settle at the bottom. But first of all, when the particles which will be reach at the bottom through inlet, it will going to be collide on your stationary baffle. So driving force is generated through the spinning chambers. So the core set particles which will going to be move and due to the high density, it will going to be fall down against, that is your sedimentation mechanism. And those particles which do have the lesser density, it will going to be move forward through your velocity or the driving force which has been created by this spinning chamber. So this with this detail mechanism, you could able to distinguish your coarse powder there in the first half of the chamber, then moderately coarse in the second half, and fine or very fine particles which will be move forward due to the lesser density into the next chamber. And the particles which is quite of lighter in weight, or you can say which doesn't have any density, then it is still entrained there in the fluid flow, and which will going to be come out from this fluid outlet. So with this passion, you could able to classify your different types of the particle size which is available in your sample. So the construction and working of this multiple chamber centrifuge is quite a simple one. So as far as elutriation is concerned, the particles which are suspended in a moving fluid, water or air. So one thing you could understand here, as far as elutriation is concerned, you don't have to rely upon only one media, that is fluid or either water or either air. So apart from that, you do have the selection criteria that depending upon the nature of your samples to be separated out. So you can use here the fluid, you can use here the water, you can use here the air as a fluid stream. Next one is your fluid flow in an opposite directions to the sedimentation movement. So particles are divided into the different size fractions depending upon the velocity of fluid. So liquid elutriator, first one is, that is your multi-stage elutriator. As far as the principle of this multi-stage elutriator is concerned, whereas the powder is going to separated into the several size fractions depending upon the liquid velocity by using a number of elutriators connected in a series. So the suspension is fed into the bottom of the narrowest column, that is your lower diameter, where only the coarse particles settle down while fluid overflowing from the top into the bottom of the next widest column, and so on. So this is all about the multi-stage elutriator. So as far as your elutriation tank is concerned, we will going to classify that particles depending upon the different types of mechanism. So if you could able to see, this is your multi-stage elutriator. If you could able to see the diagram, then you can understand yourself that the first column, which is quite of narrower one as compared to second, and the second one is quite of narrower as compared to the third one. So if you could able to see the bottom of these each separator or elutriator, you can say that first, second and third. Then in case of first, you could able to separate out your coarse particle. As far as second chamber is concerned, you could easily separate out your moderately coarse particle, and in third chamber you could able to separate out your finer or very fine particles depending upon the fluid velocity. So suspension of fluid inlet is there, then fluid and fine particle outlet is there. So as far as the construction of this mechanism, that is multi-stage elutriator, is concerned, so it is based upon the hydraulic classifier. So in this type, the sorting column have the different diameter even, but water streams are entered at different velocities from the bottom of each column. So the size of the particles of each vessels is increased, and partly because the amount of liquid to be handled increases, and partly to reduce in stages the surface velocity of fluid flowing from one vessel to another vessel. As far as the application of this multi-stage elutriator is concerned, it is useful in the lower size range. Sedimentation tests are applied to light kaolin in order to what you can say limit the coarseness of the powder, and furthermore the therapeutic activity, which is quite of depends upon the adsorption properties which are related to the surface area. Similarly, the chalk is often subjected to the wet grinding followed by the sedimentation or elutriations with the water. As far as the disadvantage of this method is concerned, it do not give you the accurately sized particle as a screen do, but these methods are used to convert the dilute slurry of the fine particles into the clarified liquid or a concentrated suspension. So these are simple method and applicable only for the batch processes. So discrete particles fractions cannot be collected here. By increasing the diameter of the elutriator, the fluid velocity decreases, and therefore the particles of decreasing size will be separated out. As far as I told you just now, that uses of this multi-stage elutriator is concerned, so separation of powders into the several size fractions is possible here. We'll see the air elutriator, that is upward airflow elutriator. The principle related with the air elutriator is the particles can be separated by using the air as fluid for the elutriation. The particles are held on a supporting mesh through which the air is flows. Classification occurs, which is depending upon the air velocity, where coarser particle deposited and the fine particles still entrained in the air flow separated at the top. So disadvantages related with this method is poor initial sampling, aggregation and trapping of the small particles takes place only separate into the two fractions. As far as the advantage is concerned, so it is applicable for the soluble powders. As far as application is concerned, so you may classify the powders on the basis of your air velocity. So if you could able to see there in the diagram, so diagram depicted very clear cut idea regarding your airflow elutriation mechanism. So you'll get the air outlet at the top. Exactly beneath this there is a finer particles which is deposited, and when you could able to see at the bottom, then air stream is there as a fluid streamer, then coarse particles is deposited at the bottom and elutriation zone. So I mean to say that the coarse particles which is deposited at bottom and the fine particles are deposited in the upward directions. Why? So the answer is very simple, that the particles which we are able to see here in the diagram, that it is totally based upon the density and the particle size. If your particle size is quite of less one, or denser you can say, or lighter than the coarse one, then automatically due to the lesser density, it will going to be float there in the stream, and it is still entrained there in the fluid flow, or you can say the air, due to the air velocity, it will going to be float into the stream. And that's why as far as the upper settling chamber is concerned, which is quite of responsible for the deposition of the fine particles, where you could able to see at the bottom the coarse particles are deposited. It's only because of the high density or the heavier weight, high diameter even, you can say, it is automatically settled at the bottom. So with this fashion you can separate out your different types of the particles. But drawback we had seen just now, that you will get only the two fraction here to separate out, that is finer one and the coarse one. Cyclone separator, if you could able to see, you will be always going to ask in the examination that the cyclone separator is quite of very useful. So this method is used for the removal of particulate matter from air, gas or water stream with the help of vortex rather than the filter, is known as cyclonic separation. Gravity, rotational effects are helpful in the separation of solid mixtures from those of the fluid. As far as the principle of the cyclone separator is concerned, so cyclone separator is a type of sedimentation technique which works on the principle of centrifugal force rather than the gravitational force, thus which is based on the fluid velocity, that is size separation. Cyclone enables the separation of all the particles, or only the coarse particles can be removed, leaving behind the fine particles which are then carried away by the fluid. As far as the construction working is concerned, so particles in air or the liquid suspensions are often introduced tangentially into the cylindrical upper section of the cyclone. So the relatively high velocity produces a vortex which throws the solid particles out on the wall of the cyclone due to the centrifugal force. So vortex has been formed depending upon the particle size. So outer vortex is applicable for the separation of larger particles which is nearer to the wall and then go down due to the high density and settle at the bottom. But as far as inner vortex is concerned, it is the wherein the fluid which carrying the fine particles which will going to move upward because of the lighter weight, and that's why the collector zone is quite of different as compared to these the collector zone by the outer vortex separation. So application, separation of heavy materials from the dust, separation of solid from the fluids, separation a powder into the different particle size ranges by using a series of cyclones having the different flow rates or the different dimensions. When we talk on the construction and working, if we could able to understand the mechanism or the construction and working, which is clearly depicted by viewing towards the diagram, that is reverse flow cyclone separator. So widerest cyclone is there and narrower one, that is your outer vortex and inner vortex. So outer vortex, it is quite of bigger one as compared to the inner vortex. Outer vortex is responsible to collect your coarse particle, wherein your inner vortex, which is quite of ziggy in nature, so which is responsible to collect your finer particles. So the upper part which consists of a tangential inlet and a fluid outlet at the center of the top portion and extending inwardly into the separator, and the lower part of the base is fitted with the outlet for the solid particles. As far as working is concerned, the suspension is introduced into the cylindrical vessel through the tangential inlet at high speed in order to provide the rotatory movement inside the vessel. If you could able to understand the diagram, then you will get this information related with the construction and working is very clearly. The solid particles, the fluid outlet rather located at the top of the vessel, which helps in the removing the fluid, and the solid particles are thrown out towards the cyclone walls due to the rotary movement which occurring inside the cyclone, which causes the movement of particles by the centrifugal force. The particles thrown out then fall down on the conical base, which is removed ultimately from the solid outlet and the bottom of the cylinder. So as far as the merits and demerits of the cyclone separator is concerned, so it involves the low capital cost, it can operate at high temperature, it can be used for the liquid mist or dry material, its maintenance requirements are quite of less one, and it requires a small space for the installation. So this is all about the merits of this cyclone separator. But when we could able to focus on the merits, there is a limitation, some sort of limitations are there. So its operating cost is quite of high due to the pressure drop, and it shows the low efficiency for the smaller particle, and it cannot be used for the sticky material. So this is a limitations related with the cyclone separator. So as far as your next point is concerned, that is your air bag. So the air separator. So as far as the air separator is concerned, if you could able to see there in the diagram, you will get the clear-cut idea regarding the working construction as far as advantage and disadvantage is concerned. So principle of the air separator is due to the centrifugal force which is going to use to separate solids. The air environment is obtained by means of rotating disc and blades. To remove the separation, stationary blades are used. By controlling these blades and the speed of the rotation, it is possible to vary the size at which the separation occurs. As far as the construction is concerned, then you could able to see the labeling condition of this air separator, that is feed inlet, rotating disc, rotating blades are there, even then outlet for the heavy particles and outlet for the finer particles. So this is the another separator by which you can distinguish only the two fraction, that is heavier particles, that is it may be your coarse or the moderately coarse, or outlet for the fine particles, which represents the separation of your finer or even very fine particles. So construction, as far as construction of the air separator is concerned, it consists of a cylindrical vessel with a conical base. The feed inlet is fitted to the upper part of the vessel. The rotating disc and rotating blades are attached to the central shaft to produce the air environment. At the base of the vessel, two outlets are provided, one for the fine particles and other for the heavy particles. As far as working is concerned, the disc and the blades are allowed to rotate by means of motor. These produce a current of air as shown by the different types of arrows. So the sample powders is introduced through the feed inlet. The feed falls on the rotating disc. Then the fine particles are picked up and carried into the space where air velocity is sufficiently reduced, and the fine particles are dropped and are ultimately collected at the outlet which is meant for the fine particles. The heavy particles which fall downward are removed at the outlet which is meant for heavy particles. As far as the uses of this air separator is concerned, so the air separators are often attached to the ball mill or hammer mill to separate and return over size particles for the further size reduction. As far as the bag filter is concerned, if you could able to see there in the diagram, there is a two diagrams are there. One is filtering period and second one is shaking period. As far as the principle of this bag filter is concerned, the size separation of the fineness from the crushed powder is achieved in two steps. In the first step, the crushed powder is passed through a bag filter, that is cloth you can say, by applying the suction on the opposite side of the feed entry. This facilitates the separation. In the next step, pressure is applied in order to shake the bags so that powder adhering to the bag falls off, which is collected from the conical base. As far as the construction is concerned, you could able to see the diagram. It consists of number of bags made of cotton or wool fabric. These are suspended in a sheet metal container. A hopper is arranged at the bottom of the filter to receive the feed. At the top of the metal container, a provision is made for the exhaust, which is adjacent to this, and a bale crank level, which is arrangement. this arrangement is gonna made to bring the filters to normal atmospheric conditions. As far as the working mechanism of the bag filter is concerned, so basically it encompasses the two different activity. One is the feed is separated from the air by passing it through the cloth bags, and in the subsequent activity the bags are shaken to collect the fines that are adhered to the bags. So these two activity follows in succession rather, and are controlled at different intervals with the help of bell crank lever arrangement. So bell crank lever arrangement is nothing but a mechanism, what you can say, that a shaft with a cam is allowed to rotate at a low speed. During rotation, the cam can either press the bell crank lever or does not come into the contact. So depending on this mechanism, the damper changes its position. So the damper is useful mechanism which allows the two steps to occur in a subsequent mode. So the filtering period is there and the shaking period is there. So filtering period is concerned, as far as filtering period is concerned, it there's exhaustion of the exhaust fan position at the top, which keeps the bag under the less pressure than the atmospheric pressure. So the gas containing fine particles which enters the hopper, okay, and the gas feed passes through the fabric of the bag. So during this process the fine particles are retained in the bags while the gas reaches the top of the casing. Because of the air, the bag remains taut during the filtering operations. As far as the shaking period is concerned, so since vacuum is cut off in the chamber, air from the outside enters the casing and passes through the bags. So this result in violent shaking of the bags so that the dust and fine particles are displaced from the bags, and which are fall off into the conical base. So these are then removed at certain intervals of time. So as far as the uses of this bag filter is concerned, so it is used for the with what you can say, to remove the fines from the cyclone discharge. It is also used to, along with the other side separation equipment, that is cyclone separator also, and bag filter is connected to the discharge end of the fluidized energy meal. As far as our size reduction chapter is concerned, as far as advantages is concerned, it is extremely useful for removing the fines which cannot be used, which cannot be separated by the other method. So this is a breakthrough, you can say, concerns with this bag filter. This can also be used even to remove the dust. So ordinary household vacuum cleaner is a simple example of your bag filter. As far as the disadvantage of this bag filter is concerned, so bag filter is not a size separation equipment as such. Okay, so this is all about the bag filter. Okay, so yeah, we had seen just now the advantages and disadvantage of it. Next one, we're going to see what actually the significance of your different types of official grades of the powder. In general, the powders are vaguely described as coarse and the fine powders. However, it is essential to identify with some guiding specifications. Indian Pharmacopoeia has described the standard for the powders for pharmaceutical purposes. Accordingly, the degree of coarseness or fineness is expressed with references to the nominal aperture size of the sieve through which the powder is able to pass. So the relevant grades of the powders and the sieve number along with the nominal aperture size, which is given in the next table, in the next slide. So according to the IP 1996, the specifications for the 5 grades of the powders is given. So basically what happened when we talk on the coarse powder, then a powder which is called as coarse powder in which all particles of which pass through a sieve with nominal mesh aperture of 1.70 mm, that is your number 10 sieve, and not more than 40 through a sieve with nominal aperture size around 355 micrometer, or you can say the sieve number 44. So when we talk in a very simple language, then we'll come to know that how it is useful to distinguish the different types of the powders. So in similar way, the other definitions can also be written as far as the content there in the table is concerned, that is this table one. So as far as when the fineness of the powder is described by means of the number, it is an indication that all the particles of the powders shall pass through the sieve of which the nominal mesh aperture in micrometer is equal to that of the number. So I mean to say that for the moderately coarse powder, the coarse powder, the lower limit of the sieve number is your 10, and higher limit is your that is upper limit is your 44. Meanwhile, for the moderately coarse powder, the lower limit is 22 and higher limit is 60 mesh size. Then third one is moderately fine powder, the lower limit is 44 and upper limit is 85. Whereas for the fine powder, only the one limit is there, that is your 85, but it is not distinguishing with the lower and upper limit. Similarly, with the fine powder, the very fine powder also do have the only one limit of sieve number, that is 120. So when we discuss that what actually the significance of this 10 and 44, so we'll come to know that the nominal mesh aperture size for the sieve number 10, then it is 1.7 mm. But whereas for the upper limit of the coarse powder, that is 44, then the nominal mesh aperture size is your 355 micrometer. Whereas the for lower limit of your moderately coarse powder, that is 422, the nominal mesh aperture size is 710 micrometer. Whereas for the upper limit, that is for the 60 sieve number, then nominal mesh aperture size is 250 micrometer. As far as the third official grade of the powder is concerned, that is moderately fine powder, then for the lower limit of the 44, the nominal mesh aperture size is your 355. If you could able to distinguishing the grade 3 and grade 1, then for the coarse powder, the upper limit of sieve is your 44, but when we just go down and see the third grade of the powder, that is moderately fine, so it will be automatically your lower limit, that is 44. Okay, so for the 44, which is the lower limit of your sieve, for the moderately fine powder, the nominal mesh aperture size is your 355, whereas for the upper limit, that is 85, the nominal mesh aperture size is your 180. As I already told you that there is a no lower and upper limit for the fine powder, there is only one limit, that is 85. So we had seen just now for the grade third, the moderately fine powder, there is a upper limit is 85. So that 85, which is exactly the limit of your fine powder, so the nominal aperture size for the 85 number of sieve is your 180 micrometer. Whereas very fine powder, the limit is 120 sieve number, so nominal mesh aperture size is your 125 micrometer. So when we could distinguish these official grades of the powder according to the another official pharmacopoeia, according to the British one, then that time there is only one column is extra, that is corset sieve diameter. Whereas we had seen just now the official grades of the powder according to the Indian Pharmacopoeia 1996. Okay, so where we had seen the lower limit and the upper limit of the sieve and nominal mesh aperture size. But here we can distinguish these official grades of the 5 powders with respect to the corset sieve number. So as we have discussed earlier, that coarse powder which having the 355 what we can say, the nominal mesh aperture size, so which do have the coset sieve diameter, it is your 1700 in micrometer. So whereas a moderately coarse powder, that is your higher limit. So according to the higher limit only, the British Pharmacopoeia has graded out the different types of powders by means of coset sieve diameter. So if you could able to see there in the right hand side of the table, 355, 250 and 180, this is your upper limit of your, sorry, the nominal mesh aperture size of your coarse powder, moderately coarse powder and moderately fine powder. So we can distinguish this coset sieve diameter only according to the higher nominal mesh aperture size of respective powder. So for the 180 micrometer nominal mesh aperture size, that is for the moderately fine, so the coset sieve diameter, it has been said, it is 355. And whereas the fine particles, for the fine particles we had seen that only the one limit is there, that is 180 and 120, 85 and 120. So for the 85 sieve number for the fine powder, the 180 micrometer, the nominal mesh aperture size we had seen, and for the very fine powder, the one limit, that is 120, the nominal mesh aperture size is 125. So we have to return it as it is, because we don't have the lower and upper limit for the fine and very fine powder. So some pharmacopoeia which define another size fraction known as ultra fine powder. So in this case, it is required that the maximum diameter of at least 90% of the particles must be no greater than 5 micrometer, and that none of the particles should have the diameters greater than 50 micrometer. So this is all about the official grades of the powder according to the Indian Pharmacopoeia and according to the British Pharmacopoeia. So that question has been asked frequently as far as our Savitribai Phule Pune University is concerned. So this is all about the official grade. So we'll see next, that is your sieve number. So as far as the sieves is concerned, so we should know that the correlation of the official grades of the powders towards the sieve. So there are the standard specification has been given by the different types of compendia of a respective country. So the normally when we talk on the different standards of the sieves, though Tyler and US standards are somewhat similar. So as the difference between these two is less than the allowable tolerances in viewing of the screen, these are also known as a test sieve. So the specifications given is that which is exactly or should be matched by the sieves used for the pharmacopoeial testing. So when we talk on the sieve number, okay, that is first one. So this is the number of mesh present per linear length of 25.4. Actually it is I have written here is in 2.54 centimeter. When we could convert into the mm, then it would be your 25 into 4. Okay, so 25.4 mm linear length we have to use. The next terminology is your nominal of size aperture. Then this is the distance between the two adjacent wire representing the side of the square aperture. So the nominal mesh aperture size for the most of the sieves is given in the IP 1996. Okay, either in mm or you can observe it is in micrometer in sometimes. Okay, so next one is your nominal wire diameter, or you can say the nominal diameter of wire. So the wire used in the wire mesh sieves has a specified diameter which provide a suitable aperture size and sufficient strain so that the sieve distortions can be avoided. Okay, so this is all about the nominal diameter of the wire. The next one is your approximate percentage sieving area, which signify that the mesh area which is expressed as a percentage of total sieve area, and it depends on the wire size which used for a sieve. The sieving area is appropriately maintained within your 35 to 40% around to provide the required strength to the sieve. And next one is your aperture tolerance average size, or you can say tolerance average aperture size. So some variation which the aperture size undergoes cannot be avoided. Such variations are termed as aperture tolerance average, which is expressed in terms of percentage. So it is a limit set by the pharmacopoeia, and within this limit a particular dimensions or the average aperture size which can be varied for its use. So the viewing accuracy of fine meshes and coarse meshes is not the same. Thus the aperture tolerance average for the coarse sieves is lower than that of the fine sieves. So students always getting confused when they have been asked with the questions which would be quite of googly one, that explain in detail about the different standards for the sieves, and sometimes explain in detail about the official grades of the powder. So students get confused, and they are used to write the answers with respect to official sieve grade, official grades of the powders if they have been asked with the question on a sieve, and vice versa. So this is all about. So it is very clear that the sieves wherein we are talk about the sieve only, okay, and that is the standards for the sieve. But when we talk on the official grades of the powders, then we should focus on the different types of the gradation of the powders, that is coarse, moderately coarse, then moderately fine, moderately fine powder, then fine powder, and very fine powder. Okay, so this is a next slide that is which represents the microscopical determination of the particle size, which is your surely it is a your lab method. So it is a conventional methods where you could not going to remark as accuracy. Okay, so this is your conventional methods. So it is only gives you the idea regarding how one can measure the particle size in a range only. Okay, so the formula, the d mean, that which is exactly equal to the summation of small n into small d upon summation of n, where d mean is your mean particle diameter, whereas small n is your number of particles in each size ran. Okay, and t is nothing but your mean size range. So dear students, by means of this formula you will get the calculations of the determination of the particle size, but that results won't what we can say won't considered as a accurate result, because it is a conventional methods where you could only distinguish your particles whatever you do have in a what we can say in a range. Okay, but if your samples which containing the finer particles, then it is easily passed from whatever the sieve number you do have, and it's very difficult that time to determine the particle size of that powder which belongs to the category fine or very fine. Okay, so apart from as far as this lab level is concerned, you can go for the accuracy, you can go for the some different types of technology nowadays which is useful to claim for the accuracy, which is which is applicable for the research area, or you can say for the industry purpose, that is your Malvern Zetasizer, your Horiba. There is one company which has manufactured the instruments by which one can easily claim for the accuracy of the particle size, and you can also measure the zeta potential as far as the stability is concerned. So apart from that, there are the different types of electron microscope is also there, that by which one can easily claim for the surface morphology or the topography of the nano size, even apart from the micron in size. So SAME and TAME is quite of the sophisticated tool by which one can easily combat these kind of the situation. This is a examples I have cited here, which giving the which reflect about the microscopic count, which calculate the mean particles diameter. So as far as the lab level is concerned, I already told you you could able to understand this table. You are able to see the two column here, that is one is size range in micron and another is number of particles in each size range. So the when we compare this number of particles towards the size range, then the number of particle, that is 2, which is comes in a range of 0.5 to 1. Then number of particles 10, which is comes in a range of 1 to 1.5. Then 22, that is number of particles, if it is 22, then that time the size range in micron is observed as 1.5 to 2. And if the number of particle, if it is 54, then the size range in micron is 2 to 2.5. As the number of particles or the range is increased, but it is still ambiguity that how that 70 is responsible to merge into the category, that is size range in micron, that is 2.5 to 7, and 8 even it is for 3 to 3.5, and 5 for 3.5 to 4. So it is very difficult actually to go through this, but we cannot going to be claimed for the accuracy. So yeah, exactly, but as far as the practical purpose is concerned, routinely there in case of your physical pharmaceutics, even in case of your pharmacognosy, even there are the different types of the practicals are there by which we have to go through this method to determine the particle size with the help of IPS micrometer as well as your stage micrometer. There are the different types of methods are available to analyze your different types of powders. So if you do have the powder which having the particles which is in a range in the different diameter, then that time you can go for the histogram. If you wanted to reflect your data in the form of result, then you can go with this histogram. So frequency versus size range, you have to plot your graph. And yes, if your powder or if your powder sample which do contain the particle size which is in a range, then that time you can go through the histogram. But if your particles do have some uniformity in the particle size diameter, then that time you can go for the plotting of your cumulative plot, which exactly represent the percent cumulative versus the particle size. And the diagram is also going to depict somehow the significance of the particle size analysis. So dotted line which represent the particles which is of quite of coarser and moderately coarse category, so that's why it is represented by this discrete line, that is dotted line, which is oversize, and another one which is a clear slope, that is your linear size of the particle, then it is your undersize. That means your particles do contain the particles which is belongs to the fine or very fine category of the particle. So for the data presentation, if your particles, once again I am going to repeat, if your samples which do contain the particles in a range of the diameter, then that time you can plot your histogram. But if you do have the sample powder sample, and if it does contain the uniformity or maintain the uniformity, then that time you can go for the plotting of your cumulative plot, that is percent cumulative versus the particle size. I have cited here some examples. This is only the numbers which I have mentioned, which I have referred from some other presentation as well. So which gives you the idea about the how one can plot the graph as far as the cumulative frequency is concerned, or percentage cumulative of the particle size is concerned. So with the help of these figures or the numbers, if you are taking out of this column, and if you are able to plot these the graph there in the Excel sheet, then it is very clear cut that you will get the graph which is of cumulative base. This is another example I have cited here, by which one can easily plot the histogram, because you could able to see the seam number I have given, it is in the range, so 10 to 20, 20 to 40, and so on up to 100 to 120. But when we talk on the weight which is written over the mesh, then that time you will get the single number of or the, you can say the reading, you can say to plot against the seam number. So this is yeah, obviously you will have to reflect here the data by means of your histogram. As far as the next example is concerned, you will going to plot here the graph of yours by means of mean diameter versus frequency. So this is your single number. So by means of these you can plot your cumulative frequency, because there is a none kind of the range it's been seen. Okay, so this is all about the size separation. In next presentations we will come up with our next chapter, that is chapter number 4, that is your heat transfer. Okay, so if you do have any query, then we're going to discuss in our online class, that is your through Google Meet. Thank you so much.